It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 306 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my comrade in gaming commentary, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad to be back here with you, but it has been a fun and enjoyable past couple of weeks. If you don't mind me just sharing one or two quick things.
Tell me more.
Well, had just the most relaxing past couple of weeks, not least of which being because my lovely spouse threw out their back because we're getting old.
Oh, no.
And so we just spent kind of the whole the whole weekend just sort of, heat pads, relaxing, gentle stretches. And to anybody who was born in the mid-'80s, this truth, if it hasn't come for you yet, is coming for you soon. And remember, if you think it might be a little bit too heavy to lift, it is. It is.
Uh-oh.
How about you, Mr. Nice Guy? You do anything exciting?
I feel like you're going to get in trouble for talking about that here on the podcast.
Oh, no.
That's between you and your spouse. I'm not getting involved in that.
No.
This
Love
is you, my friend.
Oh, look, I love it. This is a cautionary tale, and it's a cautionary tale that must be shared. It's like that song YOLO. You only live once, so slow down, take it easy, ease off the throttle. That was the whole point of YOLO, and I don't know how so many people got it wrong.
I get it. I totally get it. Well, hey, Mac, my past week was really, really good. So was traveling for work and got to go to the Seattle area where I grew up, flew out a little bit early, spent a couple days with my parents, had a great time. My brother was there. We had a blast. I was working, but had some time in the evenings with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in some of those evenings, I was able to do a little bit of retro game shopping, my friend. Now, the Analog Pocket has reinvigorated my collecting desire, specifically in the Game Boy space. Now, as you know, Mac, we're all ballers on a budget.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so I got to get good deals. And so my local store, let me first show you the game. So this is a game that I've been wanting for a while. It's called Ninja. It's blurry on the camera, but it's called Ninja Gaiden Shadow, and it's for the original Game Boy. Have you ever played this game or heard of it, Mac?
I believe I've heard of it. I don't know as I've played it. Tell me more.
Yeah, it's a great game. So it's effectively Ninja Gaiden, but it's an original game made for the Game Boy. Kind of takes that beat-em-up style, but also you have a hook so you can kind of grapple to the ceiling. You have a special power. There's bosses, and the individual levels are fun. It's platforming at its best. Now, this is on many, like, quote-unquote hidden gem lists, and my local store here in Wisconsin had it for $70. I ain't paying those kind of prices. And so I was able to pick it up for the actual charting price while I was in Seattle, which was significantly less. Now, I got several other games, but I'm only going to talk about two today.
Okay.
My oldest son had a soccer game this past weekend in Sheboygan, which is about an hour north of where I live, but there's some retro game stores up there I had been wanting to try. And so I went into one of the stores that's kind of a hole-in-the-wall store called Victory Games. Shout out to Victory Games. And he had this game in one of the boxes, and it is called Zen Intergalactic Ninja for the Game Boy. Now, on the Nintendo, this game is like over $100. And on price charting, this game for the Game Boy was like $37. So I asked him, I said, how much would you charge for this? Because he doesn't have them priced.
Yeah.
And he said, it's like $37 on price charting. I'll sell it to you for $30. And I was like, deal. That's a killer deal for a game that is very, very uncommon. Now, last thing I want to mention, Mac, this copy of Ninja Gaiden and some of the other games I picked up from a store called Pink Gorilla Games in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
They have 3 locations. It's one of the most iconic gaming stores in the country, and I was excited to go there. So that was my week.
Dude, you did mention, however, that there was a specific burger place, and I shouted them out as saying that we could be bought. When you showed up to get your burger, did they bring you a contract?
They did not.
That is disappointing.
And you know what's interesting about it? I was expecting them to do that, but I think that they may have had the B team working, because it was literally one of those things where got off my plane, and I think I got off my plane at like midnight. Me and my brother immediately went to this place, to Dick's Burgers, and got some burgers, because they're open till 2 a.m. But it was like the B team. It was like two people, summer job type of thing. And they did great service, but didn't recognize me. So, it is what it is. Not everyone knows greatness when they see it. Mac, had you been there, I think they might have known who we were.
No, I mean, I'm lost without you. Seas of people, throngs of people pass me by when I'm not, but unlike the Portland live show, it was difficult to find a moment of solitude there. So
fun show.
It's probably for the best that the power was not there. But nonetheless, dude, thrilled, excited that you got so many cool games. One last thing about Sheboygan, probably going to cut this, but Sheboygan, polka capital of the Midwest. Very big in
yes.
Sheboygan.
Sold several records.
Yep.
in Sheboygan.
It's a reference to the first Home Alone. Fantastic. I'm glad that it's a real place more than anything else, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in that gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Mr. Nice Guy, what is new in video gaming?
So much. And thank you for tuning in to episode 306, now here live and or after the fact. We appreciate each and one of your sets of ears. Or if any of you have one ear, we appreciate your singular ear. Mac, this first news story comes from GameSpot.com, written by Eddie Macick. New study reveals the main reasons people want to play games. Now, Mac, before we even dive into this, I got to know, if you had to pick like a couple reasons why you think people play games, what do you think they would be before we get to the actual?
Okay, so I think one of the solid answers is definitely, for entertainment, to entertain. I feel like escape is going to be another big one, just to like de-stress, escape, turn the brain off, that sort of thing. And I also think that that another reason is to kind of engage in that sort of fantasy. You can do things in video games that not only could you not do in real life, you might never want to do in real life. It's a way to explore. It's a way to engage in some kind of like radical empathizing. I know that sounds kind of a weird way to phrase it, but think about it. That's what you do. You put yourself in the role. You do the thing. Anyway, I'm getting far afield, but those are some of the responses I can think of. What about you?
Totally get it. Well, I know what the answers are, so
yeah, it's fair.
So that's why I won't get into my thoughts. But I think that you are coming up with some really, really good ideas. And here's what the article says. GameSpot parent company Fandom has released its 4th annual Inside Gaming report, and one of the key takeaways is that personal expression within games is increasingly important to players. Just so we know, Mac, this is based on Fandom's 350 million monthly unique visitors, 45 million pages of content, and 250,000 wikis. So here's what it says. It says the report found that the main reason people play games is to unwind and relieve stress. 54% said that, but a close second was creation, imagination, and self-expression at 46%. This answer is up 10% year over year from 2023, demonstrating a growing trend within games. Max, so here's the top reasons. I'll just go through these with you. Number 1, like we said, was unwind and relieve stress. Number 2 is creation, imagination, and self-expression. Number 3, achievement and rank. For those of us who have like Xbox Live rather, or PlayStation Plus, you have a profile, you collect trophies, or you collect gamer score over time. And then we have social connection and community as one, that was 39%, and to escape was 37%. So, Mac, I think you hit the nail on the head. Now, regardless of what others are doing, why do you play games? What's the reason that Mac plays games? It's hard when you get asked the question, because you don't really think about it. You just do it.
For most of the time, it's to relax. A lot of the time, it's also to be entertained. I do play a lot of games that are heavy on story, And so I like that. I like the interactivity of the story. And lately, a specific game that I've been playing, which I'll save for later, is heavy into the character and the role playing. So it is very much all along those sorts of first two examples. But yeah, that's why I play games, to unwind and to be entertained.
For me, I really think it's, and I don't know if this is the right way of phrasing it, but I would almost say to forget, if that makes sense. Like not that I'm really going to forget all the things that I have going on. Maybe that would fall under escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really just to come home, and usually I don't have time as much during the week, but on a weekend, to hop into a game of Helldivers 2, to play some Fallout, whatever it may be, like just the ability to, for that hour and a half, forget about everything else and just kind of focus on something that the results really don't matter, but I have a blast when I'm doing it, is really why I play games. And then there's the nostalgia factor with these retro games that I collect, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Interested in hearing from the rest of y'all why you play? Email us, tweet at us, let us know. Why do you play games? Mac, moving on to the next news story. Let's talk about the Nintendo World Championship Deluxe set. Have you heard about this?
I tried not to look more deeply into this because I'm like, oh, Lom's going to want to talk about this. So I have heard that it's a thing, and I have a general idea, but I don't know the specifics. Please, Mr. Nice Guy.
It is a thing, and it excites me. This is from May 17th by John Bittner on GameSpot.com. The first Nintendo World Championships took place in 1990, giving the best players in the world a chance to face off in some of the most iconic games of all time. Fast forward to today, and Nintendo is doing much of the same for 2024. But instead of a select few competitors battling on stage for a grand prize, it's opening the excitement to the masses by releasing Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. The retro minigame collection launches on July 18th, and there's a mighty cool physical edition up for grabs that will pull all your nostalgia strings. Pre-orders are available now at Best Buy, Target, and GameStop, but heads up, we have seen multiple retailers run out of stock. It just goes on to show that this is $60, and it says that it will include over 150 minigames spread across 13 NES titles. This includes seeing how fast you can complete the first level of Super Mario Bros., how quickly you can eat an enemy in Kirby's Adventure, and defeating as many Octoroks as possible in The Legend of Zelda. If you have a Nintendo Switch Online membership, you can compare your scores to players around the world. The big selling point of this deluxe edition is its lineup of collectibles, as you'll get a gorgeous replica game pack, 13 art cards, and a set of pins. Mac, I want to get your ideas, your thoughts on this competition aspect, number one. And then number two, the idea of this physical edition, worth it or not.
So, real quick, if I can hop to number two and ask a clarifying question, because I'm not sure I have the spirit of it all.
Sure.
The physical edition is going to be a sort of replica NES cartridge that inside of it is going to have a Switch cartridge that contains this game. Do I have that right?
So it looks like it's actually both. It looks like there's a Switch cartridge inside the game. There's also the 13 collectible cards. Looks like there's some artwork. And then also, on top of all that, there is a physical NES cartridge. Now, I don't know how that works because it's not gonna have online play, right?
Sure.
The NES couldn't play online. But I'm interested to see how that works. It looks cool. It's gold. It's gold.
Gold. That does sound interesting. So, then last clarifying question is that it sounds like that NES cartridge would plug in and work on an NES.
That's what it sounds like, man.
Okay.
And I hope that that's the case.
Yeah, that would be actually super cool. Okay, so this is one of the things that's kind of interesting about all of this is that the Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 had something not entirely unlike this. The Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 had something kind of like this as well, where you had various challenges where you had to do a thing quickly, destroy a certain number of this, that, or the others, and it was spread across a whole bunch of different Mega Man games. So and that was very fun. So what I think about
yeah.
this is I think that this will be a very fun challenge, enjoyable to compete with other people, and it should be an absolute blast, even if it's just competing with your friends. I know I had a blast when I had this same general type of thing in the Mega Man Legacy Collection 1. And if indeed we do have a NES ROM or otherwise that would allow it to be played on an NES, I would totally borrow somebody's and try that since I don't have a Switch. And as Ishmael points out, yes, I will have my VHS recorder, and I will make sure to make some tapes so that I can send them in and provide you all with those video files. But yeah, no, I think that that's exciting. I am intrigued by the prospect of it. And if it does have all of these things, that sounds like it would be great. $60? I'm not 100% sure how much time we're going to be able to make use of this and whether or not that's the best price point for what amounts to emulating a bunch of NES games in a chopped up package. Oh, Lom.
Yeah, and just to give you some clarification, because I just Googled it.
Okay.
And the AI gave me this answer, so take it with a grain of salt. No, the gold replica NES cartridge from the Nintendo World Championship NES Edition Switch game is not playable.
Okay.
The cartridge is commemorative of the 1990 World Championships and includes an embossed pixel art of games, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so it's just a thing. Still, while that means that this option is foreclosed to me, I'm still excited for those of you who do have Switch Online and can participate against other people. Again, I've experienced this in Mega Man Legacy Collection 1, and it was a lot of fun. And I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't had one of these sorts of mix and match challenges before. And one of the things that I would have been shocked by is I have a pretty good idea in my head of how much space there is on an NES cartridge and how much the system can cycle. Even something like my EverDrive for the NES, which arguably has basically all of the NES games on it, it can really only deal with one set of logic systems at a time. And so it would certainly be, I'm sure it wouldn't be insurmountable, but it would certainly be an interesting trick to try and cycle through these games with completely different, mechanics and mappers and video presentations in order to mix and match and mash up. But of course, since it's all just emulation straight on the Switch anyway, it's not surprising that they can emulate these slices of life, if you will, from tons of different games.
I don't know that it's fully emulation. I mean, the gameplay aspect might be, right? But in terms of, it also tells you, like, hey, here's how quickly you completed this challenge, right? And just as I was reading a little bit more, it says that you can play up to 8 people on online co-op or local co-op if you don't have Nintendo Switch Online, and it'll give you a rating of how you performed at the end of each thing.
Cool.
So that aspect, I think, is not emulation, but the rest maybe.
There are emulators for NES, Super Nintendo that actually have online multiplayer as well as achievements and things like that go independent of the game specific itself.
Oh, okay.
We don't know the implementation yet, and that's perfectly fair. I know that most of these components I have seen in emulation before, so I can imagine an emulator, bringing this all to there. But you're right, this might be something that has been coded from the ground up for the Switch.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But looking forward to seeing. I'm sure that the speedrunners will certainly be telling us very soon as to what exactly is going on and how the mechanics work, because they need to know them so they can break them.
See, I just like that we're in a time when it's so much more accessible to participate in these types of competitions, because back in the day, you think about the Wizard, like, how do you get into this? You drive across the country, you hitchhike all the way to some game competition, and hopefully you get a spot. Nowadays, you just get one of the best scores online, and then maybe you get an invitation to the in-person event. And I think that's a phenomenal way of doing things. Hey, for the sake of time, Mac, that has been our news of the week.
Fantastic, Mr. Nice Guy. What news, what fun. Well, since we've looked at the stuff going on right now, let's take a little look into the past. And Mr. Nice Guy, this last week in years before had some fantastic games, some of which that I even think you might like. And we'll start with the one that I think...
What does that mean?
Well, all I'm saying is that you and I have different tastes. It's part of what I love about you and part of what is great about doing this show together. But not always on video game history do I pick ones that we both like. But I think I've got your number, Mr. Nice Guy. And this one, somewhat recently released in 2021 for the PC, Power Wash Simulator. Now, don't tell me that that's not one of your favorites.
It's absolutely not one of my favorites, and in fact, I've never even played it. But I'm excited to hear about it.
So,
and I'm also excited to hear you justify how 2021 is retro.
Oh, it's not retro. It's just history, Mr. Nice Guy. Everything that happened before now is history.
That's true. That's true.
So Power Wash Simulator, actually, this is just in here as a little bit of a lark. It was the early access release. But I had to talk about this one because it actually, you probably don't know the story, but Mr. Nice Guy, do you plan on playing Power Wash Simulator?
I do not. I have no desire to play it, although I've heard that it can be very relaxing.
Yeah, a lot of people liked it. It kind of took a little bit by storm, but the story, spoilers, so skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want them. The spoilers is that it actually involves a backstory with government corruption, the Pacific Ocean Atlanteans, and time travel. And only you, the best power washer, can save the world from the imminent volcanic eruptions of the Pacific Rim volcanoes. Not something that you would have expected from Power Wash Simulator, but nonetheless, something good. And now that we welcome back those people who skipped ahead, Power Wash Simulator is kind of a funny, it's a fun game. There's more to it that meets the eye, and it's fairly well reviewed and well received. But it is rightly a weird plot for a weird game, so says Ishmobile, who has played it and does enjoy it. But okay, now let's move to the real entrance here. Mr. Nice Guy released in 2011 for the PC a little game called Terraria. Is it Terraria or Terraria?
It's my understanding that it's Terraria.
Terraria. So I don't hear it said, I just see it written. Obviously, it scratched an itch somewhat similar to, at the time, we were calling it a 2D Minecraft, but it certainly had a lot more going on than just that, although we regularly had, Minecraft and Terraria doing their crossovers, their cross-pollination, and their ideas shared together. An indie game at its finest that has had, some reasonable staying power. If I hop on to Twitch, where we are broadcasting live right now, we will find a not insignificant number of people either experiencing it for the first time or as their go-to, and I fire it up once every so often. The updates have been regular, and the game well worth the, like $15 I think I paid back in 2011 for it, but still, a good game. If you haven't, it can be nice, it can be cozy, plenty of exploration and plenty of surprises as well. Okay, Nice Guy.
Nice.
Here it is. We're hopping 10 years back before, and this one I know is your jam. For the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, really. Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages.
Yeah, there's some very, very underrated, very fantastic Zelda games. I own the physical cartridge of one of them. I own Ages, and I've been playing it on the Analog Pocket. And it's Link's Awakening style Zelda, top down, go around, collect stuff, solve puzzles, talk to people, have a good time, and it's just a great Zelda game that doesn't get enough attention. Both of them are. Oh
yeah, and good solid roots too, because when they were putting these games together, Seasons and Ages, they actually were trying to make a trilogy of games. Trilogy, Triforce. And they called them Mystical Seed of Wisdom, Mystical Seed of Power, and Mystical Seed of Courage, after the three pieces of the Triforce. And one of those games was going to be a basically Game Boy redo of the original Legend of Zelda from the NES. But as they were sort of figuring out the subtleties of not only trying to port the NES game to the Game Boy, but also to add in these new features about time travel and seasons and day and night cycle and all these things, that's when when the game sort of started to mutate, essentially, because you needed to tack on all these extra things to make these new mechanics work and make sense. And sometimes the aspect ratio didn't really allow for them to get the same ideas across. And so eventually it just started kind of spiraling out of control, and their only recourse to get it back under control was to try and basically cut that third game. So in the end, we got Seed of Power, Mystical Seed of Power that became Seasons, and Mystical Seed of Courage that became Ages, and Wisdom, which was going to be the remake of the first one, got cut. And so we just got those two, but they are still fantastic games that started in one spot, ended up in a completely different spot, and nonetheless, very, very awesome games. I love them, and I probably have played them about 3 or 4 times. And you're right, Nice Guy, they are absolutely underrated.
And if you're a collector, I think that they're probably $45 to $50, which is not cheap when you consider that that's a new game made today in some cases. But when you consider how much retro games have skyrocketed over the years, it's pretty reasonable for some Zelda, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking about some stuff that high prices over the years, Nice Guy, I have one last thing, and this comes to us from 1976, from the arcade era, and that's a little title called Breakout. There are a couple of things to mention about this, lots of interesting things, including the involvement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and getting Breakout actually copyright protections, as it was denied it for a long time, and her specific involvement. Yeah, it would not have it if not for Ginsburg's direct involvement multiple times, but that's a story for another time. We're talking about the price here. So a young Steve Jobs and a Steve Wozniak worked together to make this game for Atari because, Pong had, swept the arcade scene. Everybody loved Pong. But we kind of needed a one-player version. And so Jobs and Wozniak, mostly Jobs was the point man, he was just like, yeah, we can make you a one-player Breakout, and then went to his buddy Wozniak and was just like, hey, man, we got to make this one-player Pong that Atari's expecting. So they worked on it, and then when Jobs showed up for Atari, they gave, with this game in hand, they gave him $5,000, which is roughly $32,000 in today's dollars. They gave him $32K for that, and Jobs went back to Wozniak and said, hey, they liked the game and gave us $700. Here's your 50-50 split of $350, and Steve Jobs walked away with the other $4,650, which would be a $2,000 and a $30,000 split. And poor Wozniak only found out after Steve Jobs died in that biography that was published right after he died. That was how Wozniak found out that he got cheated out of several $1,000s back in 74. Anyway,
Wow.
So that is one of the interesting things about Breakout from 1976, and I think that has gone on just a little bit too long, so maybe we should call it there and say that's been history for now.
Breakout, gotta say, very, very influential game.
Oh, yeah.
Inspired things like Alleyway, Brickles, tons of Flash games of similar type. So yeah, very, very influential game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, cool. It's time to move on to our topic of the week. Now, just so y'all know we're on top of things, yes, we are aware that Call of Duty is going to come to Game Pass this year. I also realize that there's not a lot of discussion to be had there. So that is not our topic of the week. But instead, we're going to talk about something related to Steam. This is on GameInformer.com. The entire Kingdom Hearts saga comes to Steam next month by Marcus Stewart. Square Enix has announced that several Kingdom Hearts games are coming to Steam next month. 3 compilations, and a compilation of those compilations will bring the entire Dark Seeker saga to Valve's storefront. On June 13th, you can purchase the following titles on Steam: Kingdom Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 and 2.5 Remix. I am not going to read through all of these. But there's a lot of Kingdom Hearts games coming to Steam next month. The article goes on to say, if you're jumping into the series for the first time or returning from a long absence and have no idea how to decipher the bizarre names of these titles, here's what each game includes. And it goes through all of them. It also wants to clarify, Mac, that this is not the first time Kingdom Hearts has come to PC. These games have been available on the Epic Game Store since 2021, but it's always nice to see another audience experience a beloved franchise. Now everyone can get up to speed and join the wait for more news on the upcoming Kingdom Hearts 4. Mac, I don't know. I am actually not a fan of this, but I know that you probably are. So I'm going to share my thoughts.
Please.
We often or occasionally get after Nintendo. And when I say we, I mean gamers in general.
Yeah.
For releasing and re-releasing and re-releasing Super Mario Bros. 1. You can play the original cartridge, or you could play it on the 3DS eShop until the 3DS eShop shuts down.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the Wii shop. It goes to the Switch shop.
Oh.
You know, they release a collector's edition.
It's true. I keep going after Bethesda for constantly re-releasing
Skyrim
and pretending like it's a big thing, yeah.
Right, exactly. Mario All-Stars. Yeah, the graphics are a little better, but we're still playing Mario 1, right? Along with some others. I don't feel like this Kingdom Hearts thing is anything different. And they say that it's available now to a new audience. Nothing is stopping people who want to play these games on PC from doing so, unless they just really hate the Epic Game Store and or are too lazy to make an Epic Game Store account, because we established that they were there. There's nothing wrong with people getting more money. Get your money. But I just don't understand why we are still doing this in 2024. Many other companies get criticized for it, but some companies seem to get a free pass. And I think that sometimes it's based on the relationship gamers have with the company, and sometimes it's based on the platform on which they are releasing it. Steam, which is beloved. But once again, like you said, with Skyrim, we get after Bethesda. We get after Nintendo. I just think that this is an unnecessary cash grab, and I think it's a waste of resources. It'll be interesting to see how it sells. Mac, I assume you disagree just from what I know of you. What are your thoughts?
You're right. I disagree, but not so much in, substance, just much. I've got a bit more apathy toward it more than anything else. And I think that's kind of to your point, kind of proving your point, really, that, some companies I'll get after. I mean, boy, I'll get after you, Bethesda. But others just like, meh. I only ever played the first Kingdom Hearts. It was fine. I enjoyed it, although I do know that there is crazy amounts of lore, a lot of which is very odd and bizarre sometimes, and it has a sort of following that really loves that in a way that I don't know if I could ever meet that intensity.
Right.
But I do generally, though, while I have no strong feelings about this or about this re-release, I am somewhat glad that it will be available in more places. Before being released on the Epic Store, I wonder what its availability was on the PlayStation.
It's a good question, and I know the answer.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
So my brother, a few months ago, is a huge Kingdom Hearts fan.
I knew he would be.
Yeah, he sent me the PlayStation collection of Kingdom Hearts. And it's on the PlayStation 4, but works on the PlayStation 5. Multiple discs. I believe it has most of the Kingdom Hearts games. So in that sense, it is available other places.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm glad that it is available on the PlayStation 4/PlayStation 5. I also think it'll be nice to have it on Steam. I might even buy a couple of copies, but I was probably never going to have a PlayStation 4/5, and I do have that sort of bias against Epic, so I was going to be too lazy or otherwise indisposed to not get an Epic account. So this kind of opens the doors wide, for me at least. Whether or not I go through that door is probably going to be determined by my apathy, though. But to anybody else similarly situated, good for you guys. But I wonder how much more profitable. I wonder if we'll be seeing that on Sony's earnings next quarter. If they'll give us a line item as to what sorts of sales this did for them, because I'd be curious to see if there are really, like you said, if there are really that many people
On Square
who's
Enix,
the new audience. Oh, yes, sorry, Square Enix. You're 100% right.
Well, here's the thing, man, and I'm not saying that either of us is a hypocrite.
I'm saying it. I'm a
how
hypocrite.
we as gamers and how we as people will overlook certain actions by companies that have earned our goodwill. I mean, you and I have had the conversation in the past about, why is a company doing a second Kickstarter when they just had a wildly successful first one a few years ago, and then the game sold well, right? Now, it's interesting because I loved Shovel Knight, and I don't think I ever complained about the fact that they then kickstarted Mina the Hollower, and in fact, I rarely ever kickstart stuff, and I kickstarted Mina the Hollower because it's made by the people who made Shovel Knight. Now, part of the reason I did that is because with Shovel Knight, if you kickstarted it, you got all of the subsequent DLC for quote-unquote for free, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so I was like, with Mina the Hollower, I know it's going to be a good game. I might as well get it on the ground floor, play it day one, and then get that DLC for free if they do that again. So, I'm a hypocrite too. I guess my frustration here is, number one, this is a older game, like significantly older set of games that can be enjoyed in so many other ways. And now they're just spending time and resources to put it on another platform that is technically on the same console that it already existed on in the PC. So, to me, it doesn't make sense, but to each their own. I hope that they're successful, and I hope they do a good job with the next Kingdom Hearts so my brother can be happy about that.
Likewise, we need to get some good Kingdom Hearts for your brother.
Cool. And that has been our topic of the week.
Well, we mentioned Kickstarters, so let's talk about a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off of the ground. We call this Kick or Kickstart. Now, I've got a very quick one for you, Mr. Nice Guy, or rather, two quick ones, but I'll let you pick. Would you rather a JRPG or a stealth extraction horror game?
Oh, man, that's tough. Because you know what? JRPGs have actually gotten on my good side since I played Sea of Stars. I consider that to be a JRPG. But you said stealth and you had me at stealth, so let's do that.
All right, so I'm putting in the chat right now a link to a game called Macabre, or if you happen to be across the pond, I believe they say it Macabre over there. But here we say Macabre. This is a multiplayer horror game, stealth extraction horror, they say. So it's very much meant to be a sort of 4-player. And I'll tell you, Nice Guy, as I'm looking at this, I get some degree of not just like Left 4 Dead vibes, but also there's, what was it? It was like a Friday the 13th sort of horror game that I'm certainly getting those kinds of vibes. Or maybe a little bit of multiplayer Alien Isolation, although I know multiplayer and Isolation kind of, go against odds there. Well, this game is looking for 56,000, and they're already at 30,000, and they still have about 40 days left to go. WeForge Studio out of Sydney, Australia. 4-player co-op, immersive horror with a focus on randomized maps and quests in here. If this seems appealing, sort of your minimum buy-in price, if you want to get a copy of this game on release, they're asking $20 or 30 Australian dollars, but 20 US, for a key when it's released in early access on the PC, or on the other platforms that they plan on releasing when it hits the 1.0 release. So, and that they're expecting for delivery, the estimate is August 2025. So about, 18 months? Is that what we're looking at, more or less?
Yeah.
So yeah, the idea is to blend these elements of stealth horror and cooperative, and that's what they're calling stealth extraction, with this sort of unstable time rift that you're trying to escape you and your crew from. The randomization is going to have various objectives. It would not be a game worth its salt if you didn't have to do some form of capture the flag with a scary monster that was coming for you. They do certainly have this delightful Resident Evil liquor style style monster that I see being put in a lot of the visuals here that they say is going to be a particularly smart monster. And I mean, that of course remains to be seen. The proof will be in the pudding. But I absolutely love the vibes that I'm getting from this. It looks just familiar enough to be interesting, but just weird enough to be uncanny. And from at least an art direction standpoint, it certainly looks like exactly what I would hope for in something that mashes up this sort of weird, unstable time portal, horrors, monsters, and craziness. Anyway, I think I've droned on long enough about this, Mr. Nice Guy. Any thoughts?
Yeah, man, I can't remember. It feels like it's been a few weeks since I've actually really liked one of the Kickstarters that we've done, and I really like this one. I'm a huge Left 4 Dead 2 fan.
Yep.
That's a game where if I'm sitting around and someone texts me and says, hey, you want to play? I'm like, yeah, let's hop in and do a round.
Yeah.
Like, it has so much nostalgia. Mac and I's friendship, for those who don't know, is actually founded on Left 4 Dead 2, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, this looks really, really good. My one concern is I almost wonder if we as a generation have started to move past these types of games. And the reason why is simply because I think about Back 4 Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about Evolve. Evolve was made by former Left 4 Dead people, and I think Back 4 Blood was as well. Back 4 Blood still has an active community, but they really kind of stopped supporting it. And I can't help but think that if it was more successful, that they would have continued to support it. And so my concern with a game like this is, will they have enough of a community to justify continuing to support it? Or will the early adopters play it and then there's no more content? And to me, these are the types of games where you should continue to support them. Add new maps, add new characters, add new weapons, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever it is, with regular cadence, so that your community can continue to grow.
Indeed.
That's my only concern about that. I like this, though.
And, I hear what you're saying. I think one of the things that may make this better or may make this worse is they say that one of the core elements is the unpredictability. Each session randomizes the map layout, objectives, and even monster behaviors, meaning that no two games are ever the same.
With this type of game, I would almost rather have similar, like, static stages with additional difficulty levels. So, that's what they did with Back 4 Blood. They did the same thing with Left 4 Dead. An easy, a medium, a hard, and then a nightmare mode or something like that. And then you can add in different modifiers, like health regenerates slower, or just different things you can do to add replayability. Rather than randomized levels, which could be kind of gimmicky. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, I think it requires more care to make a randomized thing work well, more hands-on than you would expect. So, yeah, I hope that there's good development throughout. Nonetheless, though, you know how we do it here on a Kick or Kickstart. That's what we end it with. Kick or Kickstart this. Mr. Nice Guy?
I say Kickstart 100%. And I was going to say, when you were reading about this and you were saying it's going to cost, I was going to say, please be under $20. Please be under $20. And it is. It's right where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I say Kickstart.
I am very enthused by this as well. However, I do say Kick. There is no playable demo as a part of this, and while I do like it, I like the look, the feel, the touch of cotton, the fabric of our lives, I really do need to have a chance to try it out. But $20 is pretty close. If this was $10, I might be willing to throw caution to the wind and back just because it's like $10 is... I'm not going to miss that. But I think generally, if you're as far along as the visuals seem to indicate, we should be able to try something out. I still, to this day, will not let that one go. So that's a kick for me because of no demo. But if it had a demo, heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, that has been Kick or Kickstart, and now it's time for Nerd Flex.
Woo-hoo.
a segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the host. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, if you're here live, you know how it works. You have a job to do. Get a multiple-choice gaming-related question in the chat. Mac and I use nothing but our noggins to try to answer. And, Mac, we're going to start with one from the Trivia Test Bank today. This one is a Konami question. Using the rune sword in Symphony of the Night displays what German word? Using the rune sword in Symphony of the Night, that's a Castlevania game.
Yeah.
Displays what German word?
Well, it's probably going to be a short German word. Maybe something like... No, that's sterben. Gosh, I don't know. Maybe the German word for anger.
Is Schadenfreude a German word? I can't speak German.
Schadenfreude is absolutely a German word.
Schadenfreude. I feel like it's too long, but it's a German word that I know.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Schadenfreude is delight, I guess you might say, at somebody's misfortune.
Which actually makes sense. You kill someone and
there's
you're
also Freudenfreude, which is delight at somebody else's good fortune. So let's not all focus on the bad side. There's the other side too. German is a serious language.
It is a serious language.
Just to hammer that point home, Barbara's rhubarb cake. Go check it out. That's how you know German is a serious language.
I don't know what that means, but I gotta try it out. Well, Mac, what do we want to go with as an answer to this question?
I think anger or something in that. I mean, I feel like there's a fury or anger or something like that. My German is a little rusty though, admittedly.
Okay, so we're gonna flip it and see what it says. Oh, dude, it's verboten.
Forbidden. German for forbidden. Yep. Kussen verboten.
Interesting. Well, hey, we got another question.
Ooh.
We're 0 for 1.
Okay.
Here's the
We'll
question.
bring it back.
It's a Pokemon question.
Okay.
Which Pokemon can have a possible 4,294,967,295 patterns? Which Pokemon can have a possible 4,294,967,295 patterns? Who's that little Pokemon that copies people? Ditto?
That is Ditto, yeah. But I know that that's not what they're going for, but it's such a good answer. There's 3 Pokemon that come to mind. One is the one in Gold and Silver that's like alphabet letters, right? And that one...
There's only 26 letters in the alphabet, though.
It's true. But that one comes to mind because I think there's some additional, modification, but it's not that much. I can see in my mind's eye this weird Pokemon that has a randomized... It has a somewhat randomized image on it. There's a section of it that's randomized by the game code. And so everyone theoretically up to however many billion or whatever, but I could not name it. I just know that it's a thing because I thought, how utterly ridiculous. But, hey, especially in a game where the idea is to catch them all, if you've got that many variants of the same one, have you really, in fact, caught them all?
That's a good point. So I'm going with Ditto. I don't know what you're going to...
I'll go with Ditto as well, because I cannot remember the name of the Pokemon.
Okay. The Pokemon's name is Spinda.
Spinda. Yep.
Is that the one you were thinking of?
That is the one I was thinking of. I just had no idea on the name.
No worries.
Kind of like a little fluffy rabbit, more or less. Rabbit or teddy bear. Anyway, it's got swirls on it. It's a normal type from Gen 3.
Nice. Well, here's the last question. Unless we have anything, I don't have the chat open.
We've got some commentary, but we don't have any questions yet from our live viewers. So.
Sounds good. So here's the last question of the week. It's a Sega question. Who is the single letter named character that appears in the House of the Dead games? Who is the single letter named character that appears in the House of the Dead games? Mac, we have a 1 in 26 chance of getting this.
Yeah,
Speaking
I suppose
of alphabet.
we do. House of the Dead, there was a terrible movie, right? Yule Bowl did one.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Gosh, it's been so long. House of the Dead's a light game. It's a light,
Yeah, light gun.
Yeah, light gun.
I feel like I would just go with Z, honestly.
I mean, Z's a pretty solid thing, but let's split our bets. You go with C, I'll go with G.
Or Q, maybe. Who knows?
Ooh, Q is good. I'll go with G.
I'm going to go with Z. You're going to go with G. Final answers. Dude, it's G.
Yes, I am not surprised at all by this, Mr. Nice Guy. I knew that all along. G was the only reasonable choice, and you silly people for...
Did you actually remember, or were you just randomly
No,
guessing?
randomly guessed. 100% Nice Guy. Random guess.
That is wild. Well, hey, that's been Nerdflex.
All right. Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese. So as promised in last week's brief update that we had, I was going to give you some stuff about the UK side of the Stop Killing Games things. So last month, Mr. Nice Guy and we had Ross Scott here on the show to tell us about the Stop Killing Games effort. And there has been some movement in the UK petition that I want to update you on. So first, I just want to read the text of the UK petition because that encapsulates all of it pretty well. So if you didn't hear those previous ones or you haven't heard some of the things since then, this just really puts it all in one spot. Many video games rely on servers. When these are shut down, games can be left unplayable when no action is taken to remove the server requirement. We believe this is effectively robbing customers, leaving them with no recourse to retain their purchases. We have concerns that existing laws and agencies do not effectively solve this problem. Thus, we believe government intervention is required to stop this practice. This petition is to require publishers to leave video games and related assets and features that they have sold to customers in a reasonably working state when their support ends, so that no further intervention is necessary for the game to function, and enshrine this as a statutory consumer right. So that was the petition that was sent into the UK. And one of the things that Ross Scott, mentioned to us was that several countries of the world have direct government petitions as an avenue. And what that means is that you'll submit a petition, kind of like the text that was just read, and if there is a certain level of public interest in that petition, as evidenced by citizens of that country signing on that they want this to be, to be given priority, that there will be responses, a threshold level for a response from the government agency, in this case, the Consumer Protections Agency over there. And past a certain threshold, you will even get a floor debate in Parliament or whatever governmental parliamentary body. And because this UK petition did meet the first threshold, they received a response from the UK Protection Agency. And it was kind of interesting, Mr. Nice Guy, because because a lot of it was reported by this line. There is one line that seems pretty not great, that says there is no current UK law requiring that software companies have to maintain software forever, which, for those of us who listened to the text that I just read out, was not what the question was, obviously, and was also expressly, in many ways, said this is absolutely not what we're asking to do. Which was so kind of unfortunate, but a lot of people kind of were just like, oh, look, the UK says nothing, and sort of walked off. But the response from the UK government had multiple paragraphs in it, and there were some interesting things in there that I think are actually cause for some good news to our UK friends. So, for example, there's this one here. The consumer protection regulations require that if consumers are led to believe that a game will remain playable despite the end of physical support, the CPRs, that's what they call it, consumer protection regulations,
Sure.
may require that the game remains technically feasible, for example, available offline in order to play. Which actually seems like that's kind of exactly what the request is. Another one here, the regulations prohibit, the CPR continues on, regulations prohibit commercial practices which omit or hide information which the average consumer needs in order to make an informed choice. Which also, on its face, didn't exactly seem like that much of a thing, unless you, say, take Ubisoft at their word, right? A lot of this got kicked off from the crew, and Ubisoft said, we've got to close this down, not because we've got a new game we want you to play, but because the licensing expired, and now we can't have the licensing on there. But what does that mean? That means that if that's the case, Ubisoft has to have some kind of an idea of when licensing is going to go away, right? You have to have some idea of what you signed up for with whoever it was, the licensing that's going to keep you from supporting the game. Is that not, pertinent information that was omitted because they chose never to disclose when they knew the licensing was going to be up? Now, granted, that definitely seems like a little bit of a stretch, but if indeed the requirement is that it's a violation of consumer protection for a company to admit when they know their contract is up on a game, then that seems like in the UK you may have to start disclosing that from the outset because it's information that the consumer is entitled to know, if you know, and that is, which those things might be a little bit subjective, of course. But while it is worth pointing out that here in the US, we let you, just sign whatever away if you click I agree. In the UK, in Canada, in Australia, it's a little bit different. And another little bit of sunshine, and who knows if either of those other two things are going to go, but the Consumer Protection Agency there acknowledged that, they kind of were like, hey, sorry guys, you asked us a simple question, we kind of didn't give you the most direct answer. We're going to give you another more specific one. So they're going to be potentially some more clear rulings for at least the UK as to how this is all to be treated. But so far, it's kind of looking like a mixed bag leaning toward good. So maybe some good news for video games out of the UK.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Any day of the week, baby.
Same here. Well, that is maybe UK law. Maybe it's consumer protection law. Maybe it's just legalese.
Nice. I love it. Well, hey, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to episode number 306 of Two Nerds in a Pod, nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. Before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about all the cool, nerdy stuff we've been into. And if you're here live, you have a job to do. Let us know in the chat what you've been watching and playing. Mac, what you been into over the past couple weeks?
Baldur's Gate 3, almost exclusively.
Did you finish it yet?
Not at all. Still quite a ways from the finish line. I just made it to Act 3, if you will, of the 3-act game, and getting pretty excited to come in on the end of it, I hope.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's definitely been a big part of the household lately, as the two of us are just trading back and forth. So when I'm not playing it, I have to relinquish, which I suspect is probably going on in the other room right now as we speak. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, no, I've heard nothing but good things, and I'm excited to play it at some point. Well, as I mentioned, I've been doing the retro video game thing. Picked up Ninja Gaiden Shadow, picked up Zen Intergalactic Ninja for the Game Boy. The games I did not mention, I picked up Tetris and Solar Striker, which are games I had before, but somehow had gotten lost. And I also picked up Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, Battletoads for the Game Boy, and another game that has a name that is not politically correct today. But yeah, I've been playing that, and then I did get in a quick session of Helldivers 2
Nice.
on, I believe it was Saturday night with a couple friends, so had some fun with that, and that's really what I've had time for, Mac. As far as watching goes, a lot of NBA playoffs, really just watching the highlights. And you know what? YouTube is such a great invention because I can get my fill of watching others collect retro video games, learn new skills, and get entertained. So that's pretty much it for me. Mac, why don't you take us home, buddy?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out to the show. It was a delight to have you. Remember, you can tune in live on twitch.tv/2nerds in a pod Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central. Or, of course, you can always catch us on the podcast platform of your choice. We appreciate you having you here, and always feel free to reach out and let us know the cool, nerdy things that you're into, because, hey, that's what we're into as well. But until we see you next week, be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. Bye.
See ya.